Welcome to our web exclusive. I'm Mike Montecalvo, along with Eyewitness News analyst Lieutenant General Reginald Centracchio. Two topics, gentlemen, we're really going to concentrate on today, and we'll get to General Allen testifying before the Armed Services Committee in just a second. But the story that just keeps changing, I guess, as it goes along, it's the U.S. soldier that allegedly killed 16 Afghan civilians. We're finding out today that he told some of his friends that he did go out and murder some men, but he never confessed to killing women and children. It's still a chilling story when you think about it.
It is, and I think as we see more unfold, we'll see that he has a significant past in reference to either financial woes or some other anger management scenario. This would tell me that because he had this in his past and that he also suffered some kind of a PTSD during his Iraq deployment, that he certainly was not a candidate for this deployment. And furthermore, when you take a deployment and you put him in this kind of a unit, which is a very sensitive unit as it relates to the kind of relationship we need to obtain with the Afghan people, that was a poor choice right from the get-go.
All right, General, let's talk about that. Robert Bales, before he enlisted, and it's interesting, he enlisted 2 months, by the way, after 9/11. He was an investment broker, so he was an educated guy. $1.5 million fraud judgment is against him. He was ordered to have anger management classes. He was accused of hitting a former girlfriend, and he was involved in a hit-and-run accident. But the military doesn't get to see any of that when he enlists, correct?
Well, if he identifies it, they may look at it. But in any case, I think the majority of those would be waiverable for enlistment. The time that it would make a significant difference is if he were applying for a sensitive position, a security clearance, or access to otherwise not releasable to someone who doesn't have a clearance.
But wasn't his troop a sensitive position when you think about it?
It is, but not to the extent of national defense. Sensitivity in reference to the strategy about relating to the Afghan people. But sensitivity in reference to information for national defense, two different considerations.
You know, when taking a look at something like this, do you see them changing their policies down the road now?
Well, I think they need to. You know, I personally believe that the whole process on PTSD and being able to redeploy same soldiers for several times in a period of 10 years, in this particular case, the 5th deployment, we need to revisit the methodology for being able to take a same soldier, especially when he or she's been subjected to a combat zone for a certain amount of time. You come back, is somewhat of a history of having some kind of trauma. We need to look at that system, and I think the system is failing.
Well, it's interesting. His attorney is John Henry Brown, who is also the attorney for serial killer Ted Bundy. He's already said that he is not, and this could change too, but he says that he is not going to mount an insanity defense. Instead, he's going to argue that the staff sergeant suffered from diminished capacity due to the emotional breakdown. But we're also finding out he was drinking. Does that all play into that?
I think the overall investigation would most assuredly surface all of that. As far as having a defense for a diminished ability, clearly that is why you have a study in the systems dealing with PTSD. When someone cannot perform to the ultimate, then there's a reason for that, and it's either because they've been through a traumatic experience, either personally or seen something, and it has an effect on their ability to operate at the optimum consideration for his job that he was doing, and obviously he was short of that. You
know, the question is coming up, you know, why didn't his superiors figure out that he was having a meltdown?
I'm positive that you'll see that part of the investigation too. I think we'll see that the command structure within his existing unit, within the overall command structure to be able to identify PTSD, both at the Seattle base as well as all of the other commands on an interim basis, how he got through to be able to be redeployed in this kind of a unit, having an interface with the Afghan people. And I keep saying that because it's important to understand there are many kinds of missions out there. This one is pretty sensitive as it relates to the strategy, trying to win the hearts and souls of the Afghan people. Putting him back in that kind of unit was, I think, a mistake.
Well, he was deployed 3 times to Iraq, once to Afghanistan. They think by Thursday formal homicide charges will be put into place here. If he's found guilty, what's the possibility of the death penalty here?
The possibility of a death penalty surely is a possibility. Whether, in fact, they can determine that it was premeditated and it was, in fact, a planned murder, that would be, I think, the basis to be able to go ahead and charge him with that, and to be able to see the prosecution be successful with that. I think what's going to happen is they may charge him with something less because of the mitigation. And if it's manslaughter or something like that, certainly that wouldn't justify the death penalty. But even if it did, I believe that the Commander-in-Chief, being the President, could in fact waive that and order life imprisonment. Or I think he's probably going to end up in some kind of a mental capacity about getting help to be able to restore him back to maybe not in the military, but giving him the mental help that he apparently needs.
You know, President Obama is under a lot of pressure from a number of different areas at this point concerning this topic. One is Hamid Karzai. He continues, seems to be every day, you know, lashing out against the United States of what has happened here. I would think that he would want the death penalty and nothing less.
You know, if you look at Karzai, I've read into this whole thing about why he comes across the way he does. Within Afghanistan and with the Taliban, he must come on as a strong, no tolerance, we want this to happen. He must be tried in Afghanistan under Afghan rule. That's not going to happen. So he needs to come across this way in order to maintain credibility with his own people. On the other hand, when he's talking to the President of the United States and the leadership of NATO, it's a different story. We need you to be here. Understand I have to act this way to retain credibility. So there are two different Karzais.
And we're not privy to that information either.
Absolutely
Maybe President Obama knows what the deal is, and he's just going to put, you know.
But I think if you listen to the analysts, both at the national level and those that have an understanding of how leadership must work in those countries, I think I can understand that.
All right, this kind of segues into our next topic. Marine General John Allen testified before the Armed Services Committee on Tuesday. Right now they're looking at 23,000 troops out by September, the complete drawdown by December 2014. The 23,000, those were the surge troops?
That was the surge troops, and I do believe that they'll be removed by September. We're looking at the balance of the combat units and soldiers out by the end of December of 2014. I think the point he made with the Congress is that we intend on staying the course in reference to the strategy and not pulling out earlier. I do believe, however, that we'll see some adjustment as to how we interface with the rural aspects of Afghanistan. That was one of the things that President Karzai was insisting upon. So I think we'll see some movement there. You
know, for weeks we've been sitting here, and I've asked you this question a number of times. How come we haven't really heard a lot about this along the campaign trail? Now you're starting to hear, you know, is the president now under pressure? Is it a campaign issue for him now, just to the economy, to get all the troops out?
It is, and I think it's because people now are becoming more attuned to exactly what's going on and what they're seeing on both sides of the story. Either we stay or we move up. Any presidential candidate is going to have to take a stand, and he's already made that stand, I believe. But any new president coming in is going to either have to complete the strategy as it's programmed or to cut back. And I think you can see the same thing following through that we saw in Vietnam with the change of presidencies, and the same thing that happened with Iran when they had our hostages. Change in presidencies, change in strategy.
Are you disappointed that you haven't heard a lot from the Republican candidates?
I am. I think that's probably one of the stronger points that any Republican candidate might have, and that's to be most focused in on national defense and certainly its military.
Well, bin Laden's gone. You could argue that al-Qaeda is weaker than it was before September 11th. Their combat is drawn down in Iraq. Hard to criticize the president?
Well, it's hard.
Well, you could criticize anybody at any given time. But, you know, if you're on the other side of it.
Well, you know, if you look at all of the things that have happened during the Obama administration, really was set in motion well before he took the presidency. What we're looking to is the finalization of those plans and focusing in on the United States military followed the plan to be able to go in and get Osama, and they did. Granted, the president is the president right now and probably taking advantage and leveraging that, but I don't think we can give total credit to Obama. Neither could we give credit, all of it, to Bush, because Clinton started some of that movement during his administration. It just happens to be that this is the time, this president is here, and he's going to take credit for that, and perhaps the American people might relate to that.
All right, General, I want to touch on one more topic. New security screening for people 75 and over at several airports across the country.
It was good news for me.
You're not there yet.
Just about. But I think it's a good move forward. On the other hand, I think we also need to be aware that anyone that wants to do harm to the United States aviation industry won't look at just anybody. They could put some older individual or even unfortunately, a young child and implant some kind of munitions on that body. So we can't really be too cautious. We need to be smart and common sense, but not yet open up the doors to allow anyone to go.
Well, they're picking the bigger airports. Do you see, let's say, a few years down the road that it's going to be put into all the airports, including Korean?
If it works. If it works, and if you recall, about a month ago, they started a new express line in addition to this. So I think you'll see over the next several years a diminished amount of security based upon common sense, yet having to do some profiling as the best we can.
All right, General Centracchio, as always, thank you for your thoughts.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for watching.